Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the latest from M&P, the Shield Plus. This just came out. It was just released last week or so by Smith & Wesson, and it's their continuation of the M&P line, and it's their entry into the super high capacity, super small guns that everybody seems to be doing. You've seen the P365 and all the other entries in the market. They decided to come into that market, and they decided to come in really hard, because this shield is pretty much identical dimensionally to the original one, yet it holds 10 rounds of capacity in the flush magazine that you see here, and it holds 13 rounds in the extended magazine that comes with it. So it comes with two magazines, the sleeve and everything. The magazine comes in the box just like you see it here, and it has this flush mount magazine. So when you look at this thing, it's 6.1 inches long front to back. It's 1.1 inches thick. There's a little bit of slightly thicker grip here, and actually I kind of like that. This fit in my hand better, and I was actually able to pull tighter groups with this than the original one. And I think it's just because that little bit of extra thickness, and it's not much, just kind of fits in my hand nicely and gave me the ability to keep it on target a little easier. And it's 4.6 inches tall with the flush magazine. So you've got 10 rounds of capacity in a relatively small gun, and if you're willing to spend half an inch, now you've got 13. Plus, of course, you can always, either one, you can have one in the pipe, so it's either 11 and 14 if you happen to do the one in the pipe. One thing I do notice, the magazine ejection on these is a little bit weak. They kind of drop free-ish. They don't bind or anything. But unlike some guns where you can turn it upside down and hit it and it'll basically throw the magazine across the room, you may have to expect that you might need to grab the magazine and finish the job depending on the circumstances you're in. Not a big deal, but I do kind of like it when the ejection of the magazine when you hit the release is a little bit stronger. It's probably about the only thing I can say about this gun that I'd like to see a little different. It has very nice 3-dot sights. There is a night sight version available. This one happens to be the regular 3-dot white painted sights. They are dovetailed, front and rear. And the rear has a set screw that makes it a little easier to adjust it. You back the set screw off, and it's a little easier to slide it left and right. But it's not truly technically an adjustable sight. And it does have a witness hole for loaded chamber indication. From a safety perspective, it has all the internal drop safeties that most striker guns are doing these days. So it has drop safety plunger, which you'll see when I take it apart. They have transitioned to this Glock style little toggle in the middle of the trigger that really disappears quickly. As soon as I touch it, it pretty much disappears. The slightest amount of tension and it's out of the way. This is a departure from the hinge trigger that most Smith & Wessons have had. And it kind of looks like a flatty trigger, and it is almost flat. So it's kind of a flat-ish trigger. It's got a little bit of curvature to it, but unlike the typical Smith & Wesson trigger, which has a distinct hook, they're moving in the direction of the flatty triggers that have become very popular lately. And it has an overtravel stop that is designed to prevent overtravel, but it's never actually hits it, because the internal mechanism does a really good job of stopping it. And when I do the full demonstration of the trigger, you'll see this has a very nice trigger. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and demonstrate the trigger. So the take-up is minimal. Right there, that's the entire take-up, and you really don't notice that toggle going away. And one thing too is it's wide and flat. So unlike some of them that have a tendency to want to bite into your finger because they're only in the middle section of the trigger, this one covers almost the entire trigger width. So when you put your finger on it, you don't have a protrusion into it. The take-up is quite smooth. There is the entire break, and it's very crisp and it's very defined. So it does have a nice defined wall, but at the same time it's not heavy. Reset, quite nice. It's quite a short reset. That would be all the way out. So do that again. Do the reset. You're right on the wall. I just started to put pressure on it and the trigger really didn't move at all. And then that nice crisp short break that is internally stopped. So the overtravel stop is kind of cool, and you can see it's designed to stop the trigger if it does overtravel, but it stops on its own. So one of the things you always wonder when a manufacturer takes something that has been good and they make changes to it to account for what the market's doing today, did they wreck the trigger? And no, they didn't. As a matter of fact, they actually made the trigger better. It's not landmark, huge, changed better, but it is noticeably better. So they did a good job with this so far. The texture, of course, there's no replaceable back straps. It has that same sandpaperish texture that the M&P line has, which is aggressive enough to keep the gun in your hand, but it's not so aggressive that it's really painful, even though I think on bare skin, especially if there was a little extra of you pushing up against this, you might find it a little bit annoying, but it's nothing that a undershirt or something like that wouldn't take care of. But if I brush my hand against it, it doesn't abrade me, but it also isn't coming out of my hand when I've got a hold of it. So they've done a good job there. It does have these fish scale rear serrations that the Smith & Wesson M&P line has become known for. They're really grippy, but they're not sharp. But when you grab a hold of them, you get a very positive grip on them, and the only way they come out of your hand is when you let go. And then they've got these shorter ones at the front for the press checkers. They're a little less effective. They're a little harder to get a hold of. Requires just a little bit more strength in your fingers to squeeze on them, but they are there and they are available. And there is no Picatinny Rail. Now the good news is Glock's subcompacts have not had Picatinny Rails for years, and the aftermarket has really figured out how to do the whole trigger guard thing. So you're going to be able to find lights and lasers and things to go on this, and they'll stay a thinner and lower profile, so they won't make you don't want your lighter laser to make the gun fat, especially when you're trying to stick with a thin gun to begin with. So they've got a lot of cool features in this, and really it's not heavier, it's not wider except for a little bit of the grip. So overall, it's a good effort. It weighs 17.9 ounces, and there also is a 10-round version available, where it comes with two 10-round magazines instead of a 10 and a 13, for those states that have such restrictions. There's also a thumb safety version available. There's a night sight version available. So you can kind of customize the options on this from the factory to kind of suit your needs. The slide is stainless steel, and it has what they call Armor Night, which is a variation of a nitride process. It's Smith & Wesson's name for it. And so it should be fairly durable, and even if the finish does get damaged, underneath it's stainless steel, so as long as you're marginally taking care of it, it should hold up well. Let's go ahead and take it apart, show you the internals. You lock it back, drop this down. Now this does have, and it's going to be real hard to see, up underneath here there's a little yellow arm. So this has the same striker mechanism or sear disconnect capability that all of the M&Ps have, and you can push that down and that will disengage it so you don't have to pull the trigger. But the fact that you have to lock it back gives you a very easy opportunity to take a look to make sure it's unloaded, which would be the biggest advantage to not having to pull the trigger. But if you don't use that, all you do is line it back up and then pull the trigger, because you've had it locked back, you've looked at it, you've verified it's clear, and it comes apart. So we'll start with the frame. It's very well constructed, nice solid robust rails front and rear. Real simple. I mean, most of these striker gun fire control groups are pretty simple unless you start getting into double strike capability or some other things. You've got the bump for the drop safety piston, which is on the slide, and you can more clearly see the arm for disengaging or re-engaging the sear mechanism. It's right there, and if you pulled it, it would be down in here or back up. There's no ambi features on this. The magazine release is reversible, but other than that, it's set for one way or the other. And the slide stop slide release is only on the left side for right-handed shooters. Moving to the slide, you can see it's well machined. There's the drop safety piston back here. So it does have the typical drop safety. Dual recoil spring, which has become quite popular, especially in these subcompacts. 3.1-inch stainless steel barrel that is well machined. The feed ramp is what I tend to call machine polished, so it is polished. It does have a mirror-ish finish, but if you inspect it more closely, you'll see that it's not perfectly smooth. So they've done one more pass with the machinery to make it polished and smooth, but it's not a perfection mirror finish like you get on some guns. Standard rifling, well machined. Looks like I left a little bit of powder residue in there when I was cleaning it. That's not a defect in the barrel. A little bit of residue, so I must have had that ammo. This new ammo I'm using must be a little dirty and I didn't catch that, but there are no defects in the barrel when I inspected it. And as I mentioned, it's a 3.1 inch barrel and stainless steel. Reassembly is relatively easy. As with any of the striker guns, make sure that you have the recoil spring centered, or you will have difficulty sliding it back together. Assuming you get that right, it just goes back together and you're back in operation. So it's an easy to live with gun. It's easy to maintain, it's durable, the materials in it are high quality, and with the stainless steel it's not going to be prone to rusting, because this really is a concealed carry gun. So this is meant to be put in, you know, environmentally unfriendly places where it's going to get sweated on, it's going to get wet from rain and things like that, and hold up well under those conditions. MSRP on the one that I have in my hand here is $553. It's $623 for the one with the night sights. I have seen them a little bit under MSRP, which surprises me given conditions right now where everything is going for ridiculous prices. So it's an affordable gun. It is a little more expensive than the original Shield used to be, but of course this was released in the middle of the everybody buying everything that goes bang crisis, so they probably have taken an opportunity to push the price up just a little bit. I found it to be very easy to shoot well. I found it to be easier to shoot well than other similar guns. This little extra fatness this gives with these kind of double to single stack magazines. So what it does, it's under the bottom it's a double stack magazine, and right at the top it converts to a single stack magazine, so it fits into the narrower slide. It doesn't have to have a wider slide and frame at the top. So that little bit of difference actually makes it a little bit easier to fit in my hand and control, and that's going to of course vary from person to person. Beyond that, I do think this is probably the good choice for the concealed carry market, especially if you're looking for that capacity, but you don't want something big and thick like some of the original double stack subcompacts that have kind of dominated the market. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, kind of all over the place. Thank you.